Welcome to Foundry Talks. Derek Hales here from Travel Foundry. I'm guest hosting today's episode with Brandon Woolf, who is the Idaho State Controller. Brandon brings a financial and planning perspective to the Idaho State tourism boom that most people never hear of. I think most people are aware that Idaho comes up on places to visit, places to move. Brandon unpacks what it is that makes this place truly special and what they're doing from the government perspective to make sure that transparency and Idaho values are being preserved. Welcome back to Foundry Talks. We are super excited to have Brandon Woolf, who's the Idaho State Controller, with us today. Brandon brings a financial planning perspective to the state's tourism boom that we've seen. And frankly, I don't think a lot of people get to hear about. So Brandon, thanks so much for being here.
Hey, thank you. Thanks, Derek. Appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, Brandon, tell us a little bit. You've been an Idaho native most of your life. How long have you been in Idaho for?
Well, being the oldest of five kids, my parents I was born in Preston, the home of Napoleon Dynamite.
Very
And
cool.
so Preston is right on the border with Utah. And so being the oldest, my parents said we wanted to go to a bigger hospital. So they went to the hospital in Logan. So I was actually born in Utah, but the next day I was back in Idaho, and I've been in Idaho ever since. So,
That's
well,
amazing.
other than a church service mission, and then also a little bit of college in Logan, Utah. I've spent my whole life in Idaho. So,
That's awesome, Brandon. And tell me about being the state controller. Tell maybe our listeners who aren't familiar with what the state controller does and what you guys oversee.
definitely, I'd love to share that. So, it is unique. And a lot of times people will ask, what does the controller do? What are you? Even my mom asks that all the time now. What do you do again? Remind me. So, I like to say I'm like the fiscal officer for the state of Idaho. And we pay all the employees. There's 37,000 state employees that we pay. And then we pay all the bills for the 90 state agencies. Last year was $16 billion in all funds, so federal, dedicated, and general fund dollars. And those are the main things that our staff does day in and day out. But one unique part that the controller does and sits on is called the Idaho Board of Land Commissioners, which is made up of the governor, the attorney general, the secretary of state, and the superintendent of public instruction, and then the controller. And the five of us are the board members. And it's a very unique thing. When we became a state, we were granted 3.5 million acres, and today it's 2.5 million acres. And our constitutional mandate is to maximize the dollars off of those lands. So today we have 2.5 million acres, a million acres in timber.
Wow.
We netted $62 million last year off of our timber. And then we have 1.4 million acres in grazing. It doesn't generate as much or anywhere near that, and then we have some other properties, but the Department of Lands manages that on a day-to-day basis. And so for us, where timber is our golden goose for the board and our part is for our beneficiaries, is mostly K-12, so public schools, elementary through high school. And our part is the more money we generate off of these lands and off of our portfolio, which we have about 3.6 billion in our portfolio and that's invested in the markets, that is then used to be distributed each year so to the school districts. And so the more money we generate and make, then it's less taxes have to go to be spent to make up that difference. So that's the first money that goes out and distributed to the school district. So last year we distributed $110 million. This year we're going to do $117 million. Our trajectory is just to continue to make that grow. So it's a fun, unique thing. It's a little different to make our job unique at the controller's office than day to day of the accounting and the finances of the state. But it's a unique piece that way of being able to be involved with the rest of our state from agriculture, timber, and mining.
Yeah, that's so cool. Yeah, I was really excited to speak with you, Brandon. You've got such a good perspective from a financial, like what's drawing, where money's coming from, where it's going. It's an interesting perspective. I think most people in the US would agree that they've seen Idaho pop up on best places to live, best places to vacation, kind of up and coming cities to consider. I mean, I see it all the time in the news. You, Brandon, have more than anyone have seen this place just explode
Right.
with popularity and people wanting to move here, people vacationing here. Um, Talk to me about that. How has it changed over the last 5 years, last 10 years since you were younger?
Yeah.
What is it about Idaho that's causing people to pay attention to this place?
Right. Well, I think it's just the Idaho way of doing things. Um, and the governor would joke and say, "We're full. Don't anyone else move here. We're full. We're good. Come spend, come vacation here, and then leave. But we're full." And but anyway, we'll talk about that. I'm sure talk about the growth and what's going on there. But
Right.
I think it's the great values that Idaho has. It has the four seasons. It has there's not much for natural disasters. We're not having earthquakes or tornadoes or hurricanes. We have great weather. We have great things to do. And people, you're walking down the street, they'll look you in the eye and say hi, and they'll use all five fingers and wave to you and say hi. And you feel safe. It's clean. I just hosted a conference. I was talking offline with you a little before this, and we had 450 people from all over the U.S. that were here, and that's the word they kept using every time. They're like, "This downtown is so clean," and I threw me off. I was like, "I don't know. It looks dirty to me. I don't know, but I know what they meant, having been to some of these other larger cities. But that's the fun part to say that Idaho's clean. It's unique, and I think that part of saying those values of wanting to see that growth. And you talked about that change over the last couple of years, Derek, and we truly have seen that. Um, we've been here. My wife and I are from that southeast corner of Idaho, down in Preston, and we moved here in '97 up to Boise.
Mm.
And just to see the explosion here in the Treasure Valley and the Boise Valley is just incredible. Where we went to watch my brother play in a basketball tournament, we would drive through all these corn and alfalfa fields and farm fields and dairies. It's all homes now, and to see that change. So uh, sometimes we're good and sometimes we're changed, and I think that's a discussion too of that growth. And we've been discovered,
Yeah.
but I think it's a matter of doing it for the right reasons. Why did someone want to move here? What were those? And I hope it's the great values that we have here in Idaho.
Yeah, I think you nailed it, Brandon. I personally came out. We had family that moved out here. Idaho had always kind of been on my radar of places to relocate. Mostly because of the amazing outdoor recreation
Right.
access there is, just kind of right off your doorstep. And then I was very shocked to see just all the restaurants and uh, the things to do for fun besides the outdoor. You get kind of that LA, San Diego city vibe down here, but you're not far from the mountains. You're not far from the hiking trails and stuff. But I agree with you. It's the people here, I think, are really what make it special. I was aware of that Idaho hospitality, I guess, that you can see, but it's so interesting. I lived in Southern California for 35 years, and you go to the post office and the postman's just fried. He's just like over it. And ironically, one of the first places I went to when we moved here was the post office. And the entire staff were just super happy, super overly kind, made sure I was completely, had everything I needed. It was just a different level of human interaction that I don't think you find in a lot of other places. So it was really interesting to see that firsthand. And that's something I think me and most Idahoans now cherish, is just that the relationship and the way people communicate. It's just different.
Right. And I hope we don't take that for granted.
Right.
Or lose that, or that changes in the sense of we don't know anything different. That's just how you do things and how you act.
Right.
You see something, you take care of it. If something's on the ground, you pick it up. If you
Yeah.
help someone out on the side of the road, even if you're in your shirt and tie. I've changed two tires in my suit, and I said, "Well, these are just work clothes. We can clean them." So,
Right.
it's just the thing of helping out your neighbor and serving others.
Yeah. I love that. It's super interesting just to see, I think, like-minded people coming here, right? I hear that all the time too. Idaho's full, don't come here. But it does seem, and I was super hesitant. I got my plates changed really quick from California, and I was pretty pleasantly surprised to see people were very accepting. If you embrace Idaho for what it is, you're not trying to, come in with a mindset where I'm going to change this place, but you really believe in what it is, and you stand behind those values, like you said. I think people welcome you, and I think that's what keeps people coming back to vacation here, and I think that's what's growing. Um, just the entire state in general is people just have these values that they have, and it's just, I know it's contagious in a lot of ways. But I
And I
want to,
think you hit on too is the outdoors.
yeah.
It's amazing to be right here within an hour. How many different things you could do?
Oh my
You can
gosh.
go and ski in the morning and come golf in the afternoon. I'm saying snow ski, not water ski, but you
Yeah.
could do that too. But
Good.
you can hike, you can go rock climb, you can float some of the best whitewater in the world.
Yeah.
And it's just biking, mountain biking, Mecca. There's fun things all around, and whatever skill or set you want. And not everyone's that, and so, but
Right.
or to camp or to hike or hunt and fish, but whatever it is to, the pun of float your boat, whatever it may be, but it offers that. And I have staff that will go mountain bike at lunchtime up on the foothills or right after work, or they'll go float down the river, or they have their fly rod and they're going to go float and go fish on the Boise River just a couple blocks from our building here. So
Yes.
that's what's pretty cool, amazing to do.
It is. It definitely feels like Idaho's, like, it's still got that kind of Wild West vibe where there's just so much kind of untamed land. There's like you can pick your own adventure. I mean, it was cool. My wife and I did Stack Rock, which you can
Oh,
see,
yeah.
if for those people who are familiar with Idaho, you can see that rock in the valley. And Justin, your son, was telling me about it. He had done it. I was like, I got to go do that. And we mountain biked out there and then climbed to the summit and came back, and then we were home by like noon. And I was telling my wife, it's like, that's like an adventure I would drive hours into the high Sierras to do. You know what I mean? It's just, it's so amazing. To your point, your employees can have their bike in their car and go do something so close to where they work. It's just, it's pretty neat, and it's pretty rare, I think, to be able to have that outdoor access, so
Definitely.
close. But I want to talk a little bit about, finances and things you're seeing from your perspective. What parts of the state's finances you think are most affected by tourism? There's lodging, there's sales tax, there's infrastructure. What finances are being most affected by tourism? What's driving tourism out here the most, you think?
Yeah, I think what we talked a little bit about, the word spread and shared, and you
Hmm.
have certain pockets that have been known forever.
Yeah.
The Sun Valley is famous. Um, the Coeur d'Alene is an incredible area up north, the Panhandle. There's various pockets in uniqueness we're close to, and a lot of people are traffic from Yellowstone and the Tetons over on the east. So there's a lot of traffic, or people are coming from the big Utah national parks and heading
Yeah.
north to Yellowstone. They're going to drive through Idaho. So there's a big piece that way from a tourism. I think Idaho's looking at how to take advantage of that over in the eastern area, over by between Rexburg and Yellowstone and the west park there,
Hmm.
the west entrance, and so in West Yellowstone. So over in Henry's, there's so much new growth over there. A lot from the Salt Lake areas, they recreate there. Sun Valley's world famous, from everything, having the first ski lift. Uh, and then you have McCall, which is, we don't want anyone to know about, but that's just 2 hours north of here, and that's a huge pocket of a four season. Whether you want to do something in the summer or the fall, spring, and then of course the winter, there's incredible ski resorts and skiing and different snowmobiling, cross country, all the different things there. And then of course up north is just gorgeous at the Coeur d'Alene, Lake Pend Oreille, and all those things up north. So I think it's the various natural beauties of Idaho. The
Hmm.
thing to watch, I think, obviously is bringing in, whether it's the big conferences like I was just talking about, to the Boise area, is it to the Coeur d'Alenes, where there's lots up there. Sun Valley hosts a lot of events, and I think that's driving those things that way from a conference standpoint. But I think families are looking for those. If it's just the family looking for that trip or the opportunity to get out and explore the West, we hear a lot of those things too. So the Department of Commerce has a lot of great detail, and I hope to connect you with Director Tom Keeley there and some of his team members, and they can dive into a lot more of the facts and figures of that. But I know I was trying to find real quick before, the hundreds of millions that are spent uh, on sales tax from tourism, from visitors that are visiting the state of Idaho, and again, looking at how's that broken down. Is that accommodations?
Right.
Is that food? Is it the various activities? And so I know they have that broken down. They can dive and share that more with you and get into that more detailed perspective from that angle and talk about those things. And I'd also be very interested from the short-term rentals
Yeah.
and versus a regular hotel chain or the boutiques or the bed and breakfast. So very interesting to see. And of course, there's the Idaho potato that used to be on the spud truck. There's a Airbnb of that. And then up north, there's a unique one where there's these two dogs
Mm.
that is a bed and breakfast that's up there up in Cottonwood. And I'll have to show you that offline, but it's a funny one. It's an actual dog, a beagle that you can see and stay in as a bed and breakfast. So fun,
That's
unique things that make Idaho great.
Yeah, we had family who lived in Twin, and my grandparents lived in Nampa. So we'd come up here as kids all the time, and we always just had these, family would always show us these little like off the beaten path Idaho adventure spots and stuff, and it was just like we would jump into canals or go find some cliff and jump into some river or just whitewater rafting. I mean, it's just incredible. There's little things like that everywhere. And from a tourism and hospitality standpoint, you're right. I mean, there are so many little hotels, and I see people redoing, like their homes and their Airbnb those out. It just seems like there's a demand for people coming out here. If I were to ask you, Brandon, for those working maybe in the hospitality space, what should they understand about tourism's role and the broader state budget?
I think from that angle, it's being able to say, um, right now, the growth has been incredible, and so the state has taken from an angle of giving back tax rebates and tax
Mm,
cuts, and so the state has made some incredible tax cuts per capita. It's the most than compared to any other state in the U.S. So
wow.
over the last 5 years, there's been a lot of tax cuts. Tried to maintain that same services, but also had returning that money back to the citizens. Um, Governor Little announced 2 weeks ago, we're continuing to look for ways to be tighter in that, and the growth, our revenue streams have slowed down a little. And so I think from that angle, I think from the state, we would continue to look for how do we continue to invite and say every single tourism dollar is very welcome and wanted here in Idaho to come in and to help that bottom line. A unique part, obviously, that you may remember too during that time, Derek, is saying during COVID, Idaho was quite open.
Yeah.
And so from that standpoint, whether we border 6 states and a province of Canada here in Idaho, and so two of this border states or three were very tight and locked down, and so a lot of people commuted and recreated and just came back over to Idaho because of how our state was being run at the time and continues to be. So I think it's a major thing from a financial for the tourism industry to look at the ease of where we try to cut red tape.
Hmm.
And Governor Little is a big advocate for cutting red tape, making it easier for all businesses, regardless of where you're at, to make that easier to come and do business in Idaho. Whether you're a large construction company or you're a small mom and pop business, how do we make it easier that you can get in and get your licenses, get your permits, build something, do something to make that easy as possible and as friendly as possible, make that frictionless? How do
Yeah.
we make that easier for the consumer, the citizen, the traveler to come in and do that? So whether you're coming in to stay permanently or you're traveling to visit Idaho, how do we make those things beneficial for those staying on a short term or for the long term? And I think that's what the governor's really pushing for.
That's amazing. Yeah, I love the transparency, and it seems like that's a big thing for you guys. I mean, you've led some pretty major um, efforts in Idaho's financial systems branding. There's the Transparent Idaho. There's the Luma project. Can you talk to me a little bit about those?
Yeah, definitely. So I started here as an intern 28 years ago and had opportunities through the office to move up in different things. And then I became the controller in 2012 and in October. And so it's coming up on the 13 years here. But one of the very first things I kept pushing for is we really need to have a transparency website.
Mm-hmm.
We have our office produces all the financial information, we do all the payroll. How could we post all this information? It's the taxpayers' sacred dollars that are being spent. They have the right to know. And I really look at it from this standpoint. The trust in government is at an all-time low. And how can we build that trust up? Trust is so important in all that we do, and trust in government is low. Trust in government finances is low. And so, if there was one small area where we could help out here in Idaho and at the controller's office, let us open our books. Open the books, shine the light, and let's see what's being done. And so, from that standpoint, we created transparent.idaho.gov. Um, we initially had all the state agencies on there. And then it was always my dream or vision of how could we get all the cities, the counties, the school districts, and all taxing districts to post their information. Now,
Yeah.
of course, the big schools, the big cities, the big counties, they have that information on their website. But now you're having to go to hundreds of different websites to try to find it, and it's in a different location or a different spot. And is it apples to apples of what they have on their report? So what we had a legislation about 4 years ago. I worked with the legislator, Jim Addis from Coeur d'Alene, and we helped push through a bill to require all local governments to post their information on Transparent Idaho. So today, you can look up all 44 counties, all 198 cities, all 193 school districts, and 900 taxing districts, all on Transparent Idaho. And you can look to see how much was someone paid. How much did they spend on this? How much did they spend on the sheriff's office and the jail? And you're like, well, how important is that? Well, it's super important. As a citizen, you want to have that engagement and that knowledge. And so it's your hard earned tax dollars. Where's that being spent? And as a policymaker, now you're being able to make data driven decisions. If I'm a county commissioner or a mayor, I can sit there and say, oh, wow, we're spending 35% of our budget on XYZ.
Mm-hmm.
How does that compare to another location that's similar size? Or it doesn't even matter. I can flip it to a percentage now, like I said, the 35%. Whether I'm Boise or I'm Warm River that has 5 citizens, I can compare and flip and change now and say, okay, we're spending this. And we're going to drive in more and more. We're using AI to help make that easier because we have millions of rows of data. How do we make it easier for the citizen, the consumer coming on there to look up the information? Because there's so much.
Yeah.
And so I always joke and say, I want to make this as easy for my grandma that she can get on and find this. So, but those are the big pieces. And then you look at it and say, oh, I'm moving to Idaho or I'm coming here or I want to start a business. Well, what's the tax implication? Do I start my business in Meridian? Do I start it, in these cities? Do I start it here? Is there different tax implications?
Right.
So that's what we're trying to help the citizens as well. Or I'm a big business owner. I want to expand or I want to make changes. Where does it make sense to do that? And so we're really just trying to open all the books. From an education standpoint, everyone has an opinion about education, and we spend a lot of money on that, on public ed. Where's it being spent? Is it on administration? Is it on facilities? Is it on busing? Is there opportunities of where we can say where that money's going and how does that compare to another school district? Then it gives us the opportunity to question and hold accountable our public officials. Then where are you spending our money and be engaged? And so that's the whole big long story, long question answer to your question. But being able to help make that easier for the citizens to be engaged and part of their government.
I mean, Brandon, I think earlier we talked about like what's drawing people in here, and I think what you guys are doing, being transparent with all this, I mean, that's huge. I think people get frustrated of not knowing where their dollars are going, what's being used for what. I mean, that alone is a huge factor. I would think a lot of businesses and families are, wanting to relocate here because they're able to have that transparency and see where it is. To me, it's a win-win. It's a win for the consumers and business owners who want to open up shops and have that data they can look at, and then it's a win for you guys to be more efficient and work with people and not hide things. It's
Right.
just incredible what you guys have been doing and what you've
Right.
accomplished.
The tough part is getting it out there, letting the people know that it exists. There's so many
Yeah.
people I talk to every day here in Idaho and they've never heard of it. So something like this and being able to come and visit with you is helping spread the word, whether it's here in Idaho or across the nation or the globe, sharing what the ideas and how can we make that better here in Idaho. And, there's several other states that have done something similar, but we feel like we're on the cutting edge. We're on that leading edge there of helping our citizens have that better engagement that way. So
Yeah, I love that. And I love how you talked about you guys were leveraging AI. I mean, they say we're at like the tip of the iceberg with AI,
mhm.
and there's just it's going to take off really quick here with a new wave of things we just couldn't even comprehend doing. So I would imagine you guys are just going to have a lot more tools and things to make things even more efficient and be able to get information quicker and out and access for everyone or out for everyone to access a lot quicker as well.
Well, here's a great example. I just did this maybe 3 weeks ago. So I took data from Transparent Idaho because it's public information. So I didn't worry about security and privacy because that's a big issue on the government side of using the tool.
Sure.
How do we do that without compromising the data that we have? So I used data from Transparent Idaho. I grabbed all the out of state travel for state employees. So meaning they're state employees that traveled outside of Idaho. I dumped that into ChatGPT and said, look for fraud, waste, and abuse, or look for patterns of where we could save money. And it came back with tons of different things to look at and compare. And the unique thing from a travel perspective is all state employees have their own P card. It's kind of a credit card to go on and do their own purchasing.
Hmm.
But there isn't a central purchasing office to do our travel. But we could get a bulk rate because of the number of employees that travel. So I typed in, how much could the state of Idaho save if we had a contract with Alaska Airlines, with Delta, with Southwest, or United, you name it? How much could we save if we had a enterprise contract? How often do state employees fly to Spokane, rent a car, and drive to Coeur d'Alene? Or how often do they fly to San Diego, fly to Denver, fly to Salt Lake because those are hubs and then flying to wherever? How much more could we save? And that's kind of the whole, obviously the Doge thing that's come and gone, but and still
Right.
there of how can we continue to look for efficiencies? And so that was just a short one I did on a Friday afternoon. I had an hour and I want to just try this out.
See what, yeah. That's
And so it was a perfect one. And then I started doing it with hotels and with rideshare, with Uber. How much could we possibly save? So it's a unique one where we could be better at our purchasing and procurement things with the state to have those better enterprise type relationships.
That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, I can only imagine with your guys, the values you have of wanting to be transparent and growing the right way. I mean, with AI coming in, it just seems like it's gonna make your job easier, right? That's the whole goal is that it's kind of eliminating some of those kind of mundane things we have to do. But um, I want to kind of look ahead at the future. Well, I mean, what are I'm sure there's some challenge there of Idaho growing and wanting to bring in more revenue, but also kind of maintaining that charm and that kind of uniqueness. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Like, what are the challenges of balancing those two things?
I think that's a great question, Derek, and you've probably seen that in your time here and what you've experienced. And um, I think one of the biggest issues that we deal with is the growth
Mm,
and how do we handle that and the right sizing the growth. If I were to ask you what were the big challenges, would you say housing affordability or traffic are big ones to you? You're going to say, well, that's probably not that bad. And traffic here in Idaho,
right.
that's a Tuesday morning for us. But for us, housing, the traffic here in the Treasure Valley and Boise, it's gone through the roof. It's crazy. We're not used to that, and so, but it's that perspective. But I think we have to continue to be forward thinking. What's our infrastructure? And I think those are the impacts that we're hit with.
Hmm.
Housing affordability. How is my kids, your kids, going to be able to afford and buy a home with the wages that are here in Idaho? How do we do that the right way? How do we help with our education? What's the roads like? Do we build some bypasses? How do we set that structure up? We're kind of isolated in Boise. Even eastern Idaho is, close to Salt Lake. Up north
Right.
is close to Spokane, but Boise, we're a long ways from nowhere. And
Right.
so to sit there and say from an economic standpoint, that makes it tough to for shipping and handling and goods and services of how are you doing that? So I think it's setting us up for the right way. The other part I talked about earlier is how do we handle growth in the sense of how do you have the housing?
Hmm.
We can sit there, yeah, we find an open parcel, and there's a 40 acres that are open right here that doesn't have any houses on it right now in the west end of the valley here, but that's growing special seeds for corn or
Right.
that's used all around the world, or it's mint, or it's various potatoes that are very unique and specific. But now, if we turn those into houses, we may not have that agriculture that we had. So, how do you balance? And I think that's a great question you had. I think it's going to take some good counseling,
Hmm.
counsel together with the right groups and stakeholders to say what's the right way to grow. I
Yeah.
mean, water is incredible. We haven't talked water, and that is such a. They say in Idaho, whiskey's for drinking and water's for fighting. And you had family in Twin Falls. That's kind of that's at the heartbeat of the water issue. Is here in Idaho, we don't have very much, and so it's always that to help with irrigation, to help with the agriculture world, to help with so much that we do, and hydroelectricity is a big thing. So water, how do we handle water? More people coming in using it. Water is a big issue. I think electricity is going to be used. Interesting, the utilities.
Right.
You look at like we talked of data centers and AI being able to keep and feed those. That's a lot of power that's going into those. Micron has that huge expansion here in the Boise.
That's right.
It's going to take up a lot of electricity once they have that fab going, and so I think that's a big thing. Looking at the utilities, we have great cheap rates in Idaho, and that's another reason why a lot of people move here. We have some of the lowest rates in the country, and so and then you get into fires, wildland fires, and the impact there on the utility company. So we could go on and talk, but I think the growth and the smart growth, having good stakeholders work together is a key piece of bringing those that have good mindsets of what's the proper and right role. Where should government be involved, or stay out of the way, let business and let the market drive and push? And so, but I think those are key parts of where it needs to be involved.
Yeah. I love how you hit on, I mean, there's almost this like kind of respect for like what makes Idaho special. You brought the agriculture thing, like that's obviously a huge part. I think most people know Idaho for potatoes and agriculture efforts. So I like that we are being mindful of that still, though. That it's not just hey, let's just develop on all of this land. You know, let's carefully consider how this is going to impact the environment, or our distribution of food and things like that. There's a lot of things that I think in Idaho that's taken into account, which I think again is just something that resonates with people, right? It's just, I mean, I saw it in California, the part I lived, there was every square inch of the place was just being overdeveloped. There was apartment complexes going up everywhere, and it was just like, man, we used to go into that field and hang out, or we used to do this, and now that's gone, or they're tearing this down. It's just, I like that there's this really mindfulness when you're looking at expansion out here. And I think you're right. I think being smart about it and thinking, how do we do things efficiently, and how do we do things that's going to be sustainable long term, instead of just these kind of quick wins and flashes in the pan that some people do. I think it's smart the way Idaho's looking to grow and be able
Yeah.
to maintain that growth in the future.
And I think you brought up another key point that you mentioned is I've talked a lot about the Boise area, and I
Mm,
have to remember my roots in rural Idaho. But a
right.
big issue has been is broadband
Hmm.
and internet connectivity. Yes, some places are just still a long ways from nowhere, and so being able to have, you could have Jim and Sally living in rural Idaho that have the most incredible remote business, but they can only do that if they have that connected internet connectivity to the rest of the world. So
Right.
I think that whether it's influencers on something this way or another, but being able to tie in broadband is a big issue as well. And I think that's to be able to hit the rural parts of Idaho just as much as it is the metro area here of the Boise Treasure Valley. But it's a matter of what's important. And I think that's involved throughout the country.
Right.
That broadband of getting that to that last mile, getting that last stretch to those rural areas, that how important that is for them to succeed and be successful.
Yeah, absolutely. Brandon, just got a few more questions for you. We'll wrap it up here, but we kind of talked about this, but from just a fiscal planning perspective, what do you think the next 5 to 10 years hold as more people discover Idaho? What does that look like, you think?
Well, I think it's still going to be that growth impact, and we're going to say what's needed and necessary. If you talk to some family members, they say, "Well, I hope we get over the threshold so we can get an IKEA," whatever it may be.
Right.
But I think realistically, we've been discovered. We'll continue to grow. It's what growth and what level, and how do you continue to provide those services? How do you have the fire, the police, the law enforcement, the first responders? How can they quickly help and get to a new location or area? Derek and I know there's an area called Avamore that's just north of where we live, both of us. And there's the big thing of how do you have the right services? It's expanding and growing. How do you pay for those things? And what's the right level? So
Hmm.
I think over the next 5, 10 years, it's looking at, um, I think here in Idaho, from the government's perspective, the state government, it's being able to set, uh, just as we would at home, do we have enough in our rainy day fund? We prepare for, and the governor always shares this from the lieutenant governor. It's not the good years that's going to put you out of business, or the bad years that are going to put you out of business. It's the good years. It's how do
Yeah.
we plan, and there's some of the from a faith based, you talk about from the Bible, the 7 good years and the 7 bad years. It's what do we do and how do we plan for those bad times or the good times. When it's good, are you going out and buying a new truck or a big new tractor? You'll
Right.
see the farmers and watch the smart ones. You'll see how they handle things. And so it's how do we properly financially plan for the future? Do we set aside? We've set aside, we have, I think, 23% of our budget is set aside for that rainy day in case something really bad were to happen. If we were to go into a really long term recession, we're well set here in Idaho. And how do we continue to spend and do the things that are necessary or needed, or is that a want? And it's truly building those things out over the next 5, 10 years. We have a great economy, great, robust, and I think it's continuing to flourish that. Let businesses grow and get out of their way. I think that's a key piece that we've, from the government's perspective of the less we're involved, the better, and stay out of the way and let the capitalism do its thing. So I
Right.
see that over the next, hopefully that's what takes place. Looking at our crystal ball for you and I, Derek, of how things continue to grow and develop and change.
Yeah, I love that. I think what you're saying resonates with so many people. It's refreshing hearing, people from your end just who have that same vision, who want people to be successful, and you don't want to step on toes. You want people to be successful and figure it out. So I think that's great. Brandon, if I could ask you for anyone looking to visit Idaho, what's an Idaho experience people have to do? What's if someone was
Uh,
considering coming here,
hmm.
what's one thing you would tell them you just got to do visiting Idaho?
Well, I mean, I'm going to break the rules. I'm going to say two. So
Okay.
if I know people may or may not like water, but you have to float the Payette River. You've got to float
Okay.
and enjoy the river and float some good white water. But the other one that I first thought of when you said this is up north, up by Coeur d'Alene and Kellogg area. There's an old trail called the Trail of the Hiawatha, and it's an old railroad path, and it goes through I think probably 10 tunnels, and
Wow.
then you go over maybe 10 or 12 old trestles, bridges, and it's about 15 miles long. You start on the Idaho or on the Montana side of the first tunnel. It's about a mile and a half long. You wear your headlamps, you ride through, and it's all downhill because it's all the old railroad track. But those are all been removed. But it's just the old trail. It's
Wow.
just a gradual thing, and if you're up for it, you can ride back up. After you complete it, you can ride back up to the top, or otherwise, you can catch a bus and ride back up. But the Trail of the Hiawatha, if you ever have the chance, you're in Coeur d'Alene, give that a shot.
I definitely need to do that one. I've done the Paya a ton of times, and the Paya's got a part of my heart. But that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
So cool.
Check it out.
Definitely will. Well, Brandon, if our listeners want to learn more about the controller's office or transparent.idaho, where can they go to learn more information?
Yeah, so the controller's office is sco.idaho.gov. I should say that a little slower. So S as in Sam, Charlie, Oscar, .idaho.gov. And then, of course, transparent.idaho.gov. It's our website. Great, wonderful site that we partnered with a local company here to make it even more dynamic and visually appealing. And we worked with focus groups to tie in that. And so
Awesome.
everyone go check it out. Send us in your feedback. And thanks, Derek, and wish you all the best with you and your company and as you move forward yourself. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Brandon. We really appreciate you being here. Hopefully we can have you again on a guest in the future. It's been
Definitely.
amazing talking with you and learning more about what you're doing from your end.
Sounds great. Well, wish you all the best.
Thanks, Brandon. Take care.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening to Foundry Talks. Please find us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and please leave us a 5-star review if you enjoyed these episodes. Thank you.